Fuzzy, Sony is raising the price of the PlayStation 5 in a couple of countries. Now, it's not being raised here yet. And I say yet because these tariffs originally, folks, you know how I feel about politics. It's filthy and I hate talking about it, but it's a reality to the world that we're living in. And originally it was thought that we as gamers were not going to be bothered by these certain tariffs, right? And that has changed over the weekend. Originally, semiconductors for video games were kind of going to be left alone. At least that's how it was being reported. And that's not so much the case. So if the semiconductors to make video games and video game consoles goes up, well, obviously that price is now going to be pushed on to, of course, the consumer. That's how these things work. We unfortunately pay for everything, and that sucks. But again, it's a small bonus story. It happened over the weekend. Obviously, this is an Xbox show. We're not going to pile on the rabbit on PlayStation as, oh my God, why are they doing this? But outside of what Nintendo could possibly do, they are raising the prices. So again, I saw somebody actually say this, and I know it's a bit of a bonus topic, but it's some food for thought, Fuzzy Belvedere, when you consider that right now Xbox is at a holding pattern, right? They have Xbox Game Pass. They've had quite a few games released this year that have come out and people are very much enjoying them. Game Pass continues to feed the monster of gamers because obviously there's been so much that's been put in there in the last couple of weeks and continues to get put in there. South of Midnight just released. You had Avowed to open up the year. You have Doom: The Dark Ages happening next month. I mean, we're eating good in the neighborhood. Plus all of the extra things that are in there that are not Microsoft first party. So when you kind of just take a step back, right? And again, this is where I have to get the pulse of the community. If you just take a look at the environment that we're in, right? And we're just looking at the three big. You're looking at Nintendo, and Nintendo had a great, at least in my opinion, a great direct where they showed off a lot of really good games. I'm very interested in the Switch 2. I really want to get one for myself. Unfortunately, they kind of marred the conversation a bit with, pausing the pre-orders, which sucks, right? And also $80 games. Nobody wants $80 games. Sorry, nobody wants that in our lives. And now you have Sony raising the price of the console. And again, it's 5 to 6 countries to start. I believe America is going to be around the corner. So the point of this conversation that we're having isn't so much that it's pointed directly at Nintendo and Sony, Fuzzy Belvedere, but I kind of wonder if Microsoft on this holding pattern is the one that's looking good right now, right? Because if you just, again, this is a speculation kind of conversation. Let me know what you guys and gals think in the chat about Xbox being the good guy here. For once I can't remember the last freaking time, but Xbox seems to be not only the best value in gaming, right? Their consoles have not been raised, thank goodness, yet, because obviously I think it's going to happen to everybody, but we'll see. But right now, they are the best place to play, and that's the thing. See, with Xbox being so forward-thinking and having this play anywhere initiative where you can play on PC, you can play on your tablet, you can play on your on your TV. You can play, and I'm not talking about traditionally on your TV. You can, if you have a newer TV, load up the Xbox app and go. You have all these different ways of playing that's not just console. And right now, Nintendo Switch 2 could go up in price, could be as much as $700, $80 games, right? Nobody wants that in our lives. Sony, well, you can play in a few places, but certainly not as much as Xbox. And Xbox right now is killing it with Xbox Game Pass. And it's hard to argue, Fuzzy Belvedere, why and how that this is actually happening and that Xbox looks like the good guy here. Let's get your thoughts, Matt.
Well, the great thing with Xbox being forward thinking as far as putting their games on PC, having it where you can play on a tablet or laptop you may already own, or certain TVs you may have recently purchased or are looking to purchase, they have at least a broader reach to reach their consumers with games without it, breaking the bank kind of deal. Now, those getting into gaming now and are looking to pick up a console, if the tariffs do run the course, I'm hearing in some regards consoles might be excluded, might not be excluded, or if they're excluded, it might be a temporary thing until semiconductors are the primary focus. There's going to be some wiggle room and movement throughout these next few months, but in the grand scheme of things, there are going to be electronics that are going to go up in price. So if you're on, or if you're in the market for one of those, I would say it's probably best to pick them up now as opposed to waiting out the storm kind of thing before prices do start getting increased in the States. But when it comes to like PlayStation, of course, they're going to start raising prices. I hate being the one to point that out, but it's like they are typically the ones that don't want to absorb any outside costs or expense and things along those lines and pass them on to the consumer. Nintendo is kind of evaluating the situation now. Initially, things looked like they were going to be on the up and up as far as avoiding future tariffs, but considering that even Vietnam is considered a target. On Xbox's side, they've diversified their manufacturing where some of it, a small amount of it, very small amount, and the same thing with PlayStation or in the States, but most of it's like Taiwan, Mexico, and there's still stuff that's made in China as well. They're trying to figure out the best way to reach the customers without having to hit them over the head with these extra costs that they're going to have to pass on to the consumer. Because keep in mind, Best Buy is not going to want to absorb the cost. Kmart's not going to want to absorb, or not Kmart, but Walmart's not going to want to absorb the cost, and neither is Amazon. So all these places are going to have an increase in their costs or their overall bottom line, which they might absorb a couple of percentage points here and there, but ultimately we'll probably wind up footing the bigger part of the bill. But with all that being said, I think Xbox was trying to make it so other devices outside the console have it where you can still access the games. Ordinary devices that you may already own at this time, whether it's the tablet, the laptop, your desktop PC, you're pretty much able to partake in gaming from those devices or their current consoles. Hopefully the handheld that's coming either later this year, the one with the ROG Ally variant, or their own primary one in the next year or so. Hopefully by that point the whole tariff debate or battle is over or at its end type of thing. But in the meantime, Xbox has the broader window to reach gamers, being able to be played on multiple devices. PlayStation is behind on that, but they are at least making attempts with PC, so that is a good outlet for them as well, whether it's going through Steam or Epic. Eventually maybe their own PC launcher, which is in the works. It's going to be some time, but with all of that said, at least PlayStation is looking forward as well. It's just that they're a couple of steps behind in that regard. When it comes to Nintendo, we'll see if they make that pivot. I've been saying it would make more sense to start offering some of their classic games that they offer online that they don't really offer in physical or digital versions on even their current devices. Make those available on a PC launcher to some extent, do a subscription thing. They had to have seen some of the numbers of what was being pirated. And in some cases, a majority of those pirating it wasn't that they just want to have it for free. It's like they can't, transfer stuff from their N64 or their older SNES or NES over to something that's, easily playable or that might still be accessible for them. So having a store for their classics that's available on like the PC storefront would make sense. But Nintendo is more stubborn sometimes than Sony, so we'll see how that pans out. But luckily for Xbox, all the stuff that a lot of the hardcore may have seen as a detriment to the brand is actually going to wind up being the strength moving forward. And if consoles are not that there isn't as much of an exception on them, but certain PC parts are until the semiconductor tariffs, flare up. Then, being able to play your games on PC or a PC handheld, acting like a console will probably be, the biggest advantage that we have as Xbox fans. So we'll see. But I think Xbox, I don't know if they have tea leaves or crystal ball or not, but it seems like they were best prepared for pretty much any outcome as far as how things are looking, whether it's tariff battles or just short supply on things or even a potential pandemic. I think the big thing was seeing how the pandemic, kind of exposed how we don't have the supply lines like we should. They probably looked at, other alternatives, such as even Nintendo for that matter, but they're probably best suited considering they have access to PC through Windows. They're working on handhelds. They have a mobile app that we're hoping is, released soon. They do have the mobile access, but not a dedicated mobile app for those on iOS other than going through their browser kind of thing. But yeah, they're always, sometimes to their detriment, they're always a few steps ahead. Like, look at how the Kinect and all of that stuff went, and now Nintendo's kind of going through that to some extent. Not with a Kinect per se, but like if you don't want to pay these prices, we have a console for you kind of thing. It looks like Xbox always a couple of steps ahead, and it's going to be to their benefit in these coming months, coming weeks, or years even for that matter. And the others might have a little bit rougher time, but if you're in the market, get your electronics now while they're not,
smart.
Overpriced. Let's just say.
I mean, that's actually a smart idea, but you know something? I didn't even equate what you said, and now it makes even more sense, right? Like, look, every dinosaur in this chat, which by the way, we have 315 people already here. We're 17 minutes into the show. This is amazing, folks. Like I said, nothing is guaranteed on YouTube. And Mrs. Boom and I are incredibly grateful for the amount of views that we get, even with the amount of people here that are in the chat watching live. When you consider what I said to open up and to kind of give you the layup for this, I didn't even take into account the fact that they've gone multi-plat, they've gone third party. Now, granted, folks, understand dinosaurs like us, we still don't like the idea, right? It's still a weird processing, right? Like you say, Halo's going to be on Nintendo, maybe Halo's going to be on what, PlayStation? This is outrageous, but that, in fact, unfortunately, is the nature of the beast. And Fuzzy, I just want to just kind of add some additional context. You said better prepared, tea leaves. Well, it looks like Xbox was looking down the line. Now, I'm not saying that they had any idea that these, that the current administration was going to tariff the entire world. No one could have ever guessed that. I'm just saying that when you consider, their consoles, they're just not selling as much as they used to. Why is that? Well, because you can get the games everywhere, right? So no one needs to buy an Xbox, quote unquote. Why are you going to buy? So, like Paris asked a couple of months ago, Phil, why should I buy a new Xbox? Because this next Xbox is going to be much different than we've ever had before for consoles. And that's this magic box that's going to do everything, right? So when you consider Nintendo, $80, $90 games, potentially a $700, I can't even believe I'm saying this, Mamma Mia, $700 Switch 2, which again, I read a report this morning where it said that it could be tariffed at 125%. Like, just do the math, ladies and gentlemen, that the thing was coming in at $500 to begin with. I mean, that's just crazy. So yeah, I mean, again, as someone who loves his nephew more than I love my own life, he's going to get a Switch by hook or by crook. But if it's $700, I will not buy one for myself. I cannot sign off on that.